Hello, everybody, and welcome to some more problem walkthroughs. So this is exercise 13. So presented below are three independent situations. So in terms of a review of contingencies, we have, what is this? This is probable, reasonably possible, remote, and then we can estimate, cannot estimate. And going back here, the one time that we're actually going to go through and record the transaction is right over here. So let's go through and then remote, no action, no action. This is all going to be disclosed. And I would say this is record and disclose. Okay, so during 2020, Salt and Pepper became involved in a tax dispute with the IRS. Their attorneys have indicated that they believe it is probable that Salt and Pepper will lose this dispute. They also believe that Salt and Pepper will have to pay the IRS between $900,000 and $1.4 million. After the financial statements were issued, the case is settled with the IRS for $1.2 million. What amount, if any, should be reported as a liability for this contingency as of December 31st? So the first thing is that when we're going through and recording this, one of the things you'll remember, and I may have talked about this before, but if we're an auditor and we're preparing financial statements, we have to get a letter from every single one of the attorneys that are involved with the company. The reason why we do this is because we need the attorneys to come forward and tell us with the matters that they're going through and assisting us with. What we need them to do is to go through and to estimate what the liabilities are going to be. So, or the matters that they're working on. Now, one of the things is about number one, this first situation here, we believe that we'll have to pay the IRS between 900 and 1.4 million. Now, this is right here. So we're going to have to record this on the financial statements. Now, a few moments before I was going through and not kind of going with my gut feeling, I would have wanted to record the 1.4 million. But, you know, as your text gives the answer correctly, it is going to be the FASB requires that when some amount within the range of expected loss appears at the time to better estimate than any other amount within the range, that amount is accrued. And they don't know what the amount is. Because they don't know what that amount is, you're going to accrue the lower end range of 900,000, but then you're going to disclose that the liability could be up to 1.4 million. So that's what you would do is you would record on Salt and Pepper's financial statements the loss for 900,000, or basically the cost, and then you would have a further disclosure that that amount is the amount that you booked, and then you're basically at the same time you're potentially liable up to 1.4. So, and I will say this again, when you are preparing financial statements, these are fully accessible by the world. So when we make disclosures relating to lawsuits, we need to be very, very careful. I've served as an audit committee before for a not-for-profit entity. They began in the footnotes to start talking about a lawsuit. And I stopped it right then and there. And I said, you cannot put this kind of detail in there. It's not what it's there for. You briefly describe it, you do the necessary disclosure, and you move on. And for those of you who are unaware with the process in terms of how financial statements actually get published, the company is going to be the one who is responsible, or management is responsible for creating the financial statements. Once the financial statements have been created, Then the auditors are going to come in and do their work, whether it be a review or an audit. And then before it gets filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, you're going to have attorneys that will be looking over the work as well. So that's kind of what happens. Okay, number 2. On October 1st, 2020, Jackson Chemical was identified as a potentially responsible party by the EPA. Jackson's management, along with the council, have concluded that it is probable that Jackson will be responsible for damages, and a reasonable amount of these damages would be $5 million. Jackson's insurance policy of $9 million has a deductible clause of $500,000. How should Jackson Chemical report this information in its financial statements at December 31st? When I saw this, my initial reaction was to just report the $500,000, but that is wrong. What you're going to do is you're going to record the liability of $5 million, and the insurance recovery is something called a gain contingency, and you're not going to be going through and recording that later. So what you would do is you would book the loss over here for number 2 at $5 million, and then you would more than likely have a disclosure later on that would kind of say, we do have insurance to cover this. However, it's, again, we're not going to show any potential recovery until we've actually cleared it with our insurance company. Last one over here is Etheridge has a manufacturing plant in Sudan, which was destroyed in the Civil War. It is not certain who will compensate Etheridge for this destruction, but Etheridge has been assured by governmental officials that it will receive a definite amount for this plant. The amount of the compensation will be less than the fair value of the plant, but more than its book value. How should the contingency be reported in the financial statements? So again, this is a gain contingency, and the amount received, because the amount received will be in excess of the book value of the plant, gain contingencies are not recorded and are disclosed only when the probabilities are high that a gain contingency will become a reality. So here it's just going to basically be disclosure, and assuming that you've gone through here and you've already accrued for the loss of that actual plant. So this here would be a gain disclosure that would be disclosed. And again, gain contingencies are not recorded. Rather, they are disclosed only when the probabilities are high that a gain contingency will become a reality. So anyways, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a good one.